Hello. Hello, hello. Welcome
Hi.
back. We have another story for you today because, hands down, everybody says we want to hear stories. So, today we have with us Mary Ellen, and she is talking to one of you out there, and she has a story to tell. And without further ado, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for having me on
so
your podcast.
we'll start from the very beginning.
Okay.
Go for it. You're born into the religion?
Actually, yeah, well, kind of. My mom was found door to door when I was like infant.
Okay.
So we've just, I mean, that's all we've ever known is
Okay.
going to the Kingdom Hall. And I grew up in Pittsburgh, California.
Okay.
And um, as far as I can remember, I've been in a Kingdom Hall. So,
Okay.
and then
Mhm.
eventually, after five, we moved up to Oregon.
Mhm.
And I eventually ended up in Washington.
Okay.
Yeah,
So growing up, your mom was a single mom, right?
she was.
And you have a couple brothers and sisters, right?
I do. I have three brothers.
Okay.
Um, I have one older, two twins, brothers that are younger by 4 years.
Okay.
None of them are witnesses
Today.
now. hmm
Okay.
So,
All right. So let's start with sharing just a little bit about what your life, what your daily life, your living conditions were like as you were growing up as dedicated Jehovah's Witnesses.
um, my daily life, embarrassing. We grew up, um, not like everybody else. We were kind of, well, her being the only single mom in our hall from the start, until the day she passed. We were the family that needed the most help, I would say. Jonathan and Nathan were a lot. So we had numerous brothers try to study with them. Um,
Mhm.
our house was always the one that needed repairs, whether it was to fix plumbing or fix the roof, anything like that. It's just we were the poor family in the Kingdom Hall, and I think that we
Yeah.
were the only one. So,
And
um,
as we were talking before, you were describing some pretty extreme poverty
yeah.
circumstances, right?
So we didn't get ever have fresh fruit, food, broccoli, veggies. A lot of our food was through food stamps,
Mhm.
shoes, clothing, backpacks. Everything was hand-me-downs. So
Mhm.
being the only girl in the family, I just kind of got used to my older brother's hand-me-downs. So whether it was shoes, backpacks, flannels,
Mhm.
things like that, jeans, I had to make it work. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and um, just kind of got used to being, you know, the homely looking one. Um, but we I found out as I got older that we did not have to live that way. That my mom had been donating a lot of our funds that she was receiving to the hall. So we could have had a car that didn't break down. We could have had shoes that fit. We could have had food. And
I think this is a really important thing for people to understand. She sacrificed her children's well-being for the organization, and I'm sure she meant well, or, she takes these talks, the giving donations, the poor widow that put in her 2 small coins, which was all she had. She did that literally, right?
she did. But I bet that widow didn't have four children behind her
4
that
kids to
needed
support.
food in their stomachs and
Right,
clean sheets, or
right.
a part of the house that didn't have feces or urine, or, you know, look like a scene from the show Hoarders. It
Right,
just, we always just kind of thought that that was it. That's the best it's going to get for a while.
right,
So,
right.
and
In
then
the
you go to the
meantime,
hall and
she's supporting
yeah,
the organization.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You know
and then
what?
it was
As we were talking before, you told me how you found out. So how did you find out How did you tell
I
that tell that part? How did you find out?
it didn't click like together until like how I really grew up or what it was like until I was binge watching Scientology with I think it's Leah, is it Remini and her
Mhm,
friend, the gentleman.
mhm.
And I was just watching it and I remember thinking like, wow, these people are crazy, and they're doing all these things and what's happening. I was like, oh, they're psycho. And then there was an episode about witnesses and that hit hard because I never compared the two. I never thought that one could be like the other. I didn't think that the way that I was feeling about Scientology and how horrible they treat people and what they tell people and how they separate families and things like that, that was, you know, that was just a them thing.
Right.
No, it was a me thing. It's a
Yeah, it's a
witness
cult.
thing.
Yep, it was a
Yeah.
cult. It was growing
And
up in a cult.
yeah. And yeah. And so after that I just started reading and looking at videos and I thought, it's not just me. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
the only person that grew up like this. I'm not the only person that thought this. I'm not the only person that, you know, I'm not crazy.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
when my mom would tell me to have my little brother's jackets, shoes, books, everything ready, and I was doing so good, and I thought that, they would wait for me because I got busy with doing everybody else's things. And then the next thing I know, I'm the one at the house and she's already on her way to the hall. So I had to make my own arrangements to get to the hall.
Yeah.
And I felt like the worst daughter. Like I failed. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't good enough to like ride
Mhm.
with my family. So I had to
Yeah.
like start calling around. Normally people, they got used to me calling. So I kind of knew right away who I could call. Um, but every once in a while, if they were out of town or if they had a part, sometimes I got left behind and then I would
Right.
get punished for it when they got back. So
Right. Right.
it was
Right.
staying home was just not an option, whether
Well,
she
it's
lived
because
without me or not.
it was an extremist religion. It's an extremist religion for sure. So you said you eventually got baptized by about 16, you said, right?
Yes. Yeah. At the Tacoma Dome here in Washington. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So then what?
it's not something that like I really wanted, the sister that was studying with me was an amazing person, inside and out, did so many things.
Mhm.
There's still a few of them till this day that I hold in just the highest regards because they've done so much for me.
Mhm.
A lot of them are not alive anymore. I think there's only two left,
Mhm.
and one's not much older than me, but she taught me everything about being just a person and not
Yeah.
a witness, really. Um,
A
but the
human
main
being.
reason I got baptized was for her. Yeah, she she wanted it so badly, and you could tell that she's like, you're gonna do great, you're gonna be wonderful. And when I looked over after I came out of the water, and she's just streaming with tears, and I was like, okay, it was okay. Like I didn't mind, but
Mhm.
if it was up to me, I don't think I would have ever gone in that water. I didn't deserve. I shouldn't have gone in the water, but
Right. Right. But
um,
that pressure to
yeah,
please other people is intense, you know?
it is.
I remember I remember when I got baptized, I was super, super young, and looking around, it was all the elders' kids. It was all the peers, you know? There weren't adults that were getting baptized. It was kids.
Yeah,
The growth of the organization has been naive children dedicating their life to God. So
yeah,
we're as you're listening to this story, we're going to talk a lot about the consequences of being naive, because her story is very similar to a lot of my story where, some of our choices that we made were not the best choices in the universe, but a lot of that was because we were very sheltered and very naive. So you eventually get married, right?
yes, I did.
Okay.
Um, it was like a it's kind of like a hush hush because um, we were already expecting, and we had to hurry up and get married at the courthouse because the sister that was studying with me already knew, even though she didn't say anything. I knew she knew. So she said, your window's running out. You've got to hurry up and do this. And so we ran to the courthouse in Oregon City, got married. Um, and then when we came back up to Washington, we went to the hall out here. Um, and you feel the eyes, you hear the whispering. Um, so we kind of would just look at each other like, okay, they already know, we're gonna get in trouble. And that's what we were most scared of, was just getting in trouble, and people that we would go to
Mhm.
barbecues with or the luau's with after the Tuesday meetings or the Sunday meetings. They were all going to find out. And but they never said anything. We did end up getting public reproof though, because nothing was ever, proved or said aloud. We kept our trap
Right,
shut.
right.
Um, but they're not dumb. So
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? This is the beginning of psychological trauma, right? Because what should be a beautiful event in your life, you're expecting a first baby, you're married, you're newlyweds, it's shrouded with this fear of getting into trouble, of something
yeah,
that should have been either none of anybody's business. You should have been able to enjoy that time period. And that was the religion took that from you.
yeah, yeah. No, it would have been nice to enjoy it with everybody that we
Hmm.
thought cared and loved us and supported us. But in the courthouse, it really just ended up being um, my mom, his mom, and I think
And that's
just
it.
my brothers were there. That's really it. And my Bible teacher that studied with me from 12 until I left Oregon. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I'm still in contact with her till this day.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay, so what about what's tell us about this. Tell us about how this relationship went.
Hmm. Well, um, well, there's a lot. So after the baby was born, he did not like being a dad. So we didn't stay together very long. He ended up going down to California to be a salesman. So I was in Tacoma by myself in a triplex with a newborn.
Mhm.
Power got shut off. It was just a rocky start. Witnesses really didn't know, but they really didn't ask either. So everything that I had as far as money went to formula. I sold a car so that I could get more formula, keep the lights on, things like that. And then eventually, when Logan, my oldest, got older, he ended up requesting to have him for a week before I moved to Missouri. Um,
So
and
the biological dad wanted to visit.
right, right. And I mean, he had him here and there off and on, which, is fine. And he made it made sense. Like the way he said it, I want to say goodbye. I want to take him here. I want to take him camping. I won't see him until the summer. And I felt terrible. And then I thought, okay, I could use this time to get everything packed, to get everything sold, and get all my ducks in a row to take off. And I did. So I let him come, take his things, and he had him for a week, and we were going to meet at a restaurant, and I was going to get him back. So when I went to the restaurant to go pick him up, he wasn't there. But my in-laws were. My ex-in-laws were there, his parents, and they informed me that I was not going to get my son back, that he was staying in Washington, that they just could not have him. And I remember looking at them and saying, "You can't have him. You're going to be upset if he goes? What do you think you're doing to me?" So
Right.
I didn't even say much more after that. I just took off, went to the house where they were supposedly empty. Everything's gone. No child. No, no dad.
Your
No,
babies your
gone.
baby's grandparents, they're witnesses too.
They're all witnesses. They're still witnesses. Yeah.
Okay. So they're
So
witnesses, and
yeah.
your you're in good standing, right?
Yes, I was in good
That's
standing. I
yeah.
was going out in service a lot, but I was still a single mom, so I just went out when I could, but hadn't gotten in really trouble or anything like that. Um, I went to a variety of brothers and sisters' houses that I thought where he could be, and people would either tell me through the door that they just don't want to get involved or that he's not there. A few sisters, as I was leaving, would come up to me like through the window, knock on the window, call me over, and just say, I'm really sorry, but I heard he was here. And then I would go over there with that tip. No, no son. So,
Yeah.
and this went on for a long time. He actually ended up having him for 2 years before I got him back.
Mhm.
And I staked out every Kingdom Hall, every job site, um, every house, um, trying to find him.
Yeah.
So, and nobody, not one person helped. Not even the sister that I grew up with, or that we roomed with, here in Lake Bay. She knew where he was. Nobody would tell me. They just would put their heads down and couldn't even look at me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they turn a blind eye and conveniently just leave it all in Jehovah's hands. And no matter what you
that's
have to
exactly what
suffer, it's
they
all
said.
going to be made right in the paradise. We're all going to forget everything that we've had to
Mm,
go through. It's all going to be perfect in the paradise. And they just completely turn a blind eye with no sense of humanity for helping a human. They don't even see our humanity whatsoever.
no,
Okay, so you
and
get
that's
your son back. You do get your
I
son
get
back.
2 years. Yeah, I
Okay.
get him back. It took him a while to adjust. His dad got into some trouble for the way that that was handled, obviously. Um, so I ended up moving to Missouri. I took him back to Missouri with me. Um, and that situation was no better. It's like you just went right in from the frying pan into the fire at that
Mhm.
point. I ended up marrying another brother who I accepted a marriage proposal, never even met. We were on the phone, and he was the cousin of a roommate, a sister that I was staying with in Kelso, Washington. And
Mhm.
he's like, we should get married. And we jokingly just said, okay, sure. And we actually ended up really doing it. Um, and I thought of it from like the single mom part or the side where I can't afford to keep going on like this. I need help. So if I marry a nice brother who can
Yeah.
help, then that's a good thing. There's nothing bad there. I mean, I can't see anything wrong with that. And I was probably what, mid-20s at this point. So I thought,
Mhm.
okay, I can do it. All right. So I moved to Missouri, got married to this gentleman, this great brother, and not a great brother.
Well, we
A
don't
terrible
really
brother.
know who we're marrying, so that's kind of
No.
it's easy to
And
see. I mean, what, you're dating by phone? Yeah, the pretenses can be, right? Okay, so I
yeah,
know I've had people tell me this. Why did you do that? What is wrong with you? Why weren't you thinking? Hello, we're in a cult.
I didn't know any better. I
You don't
just
know any
didn't
better.
know. I didn't have any life lessons under my belt. I just thought, you know, I can't afford a place on my own. I can't afford a decent car. I can't afford to feed my son. I'm working two jobs. I'm putting myself through school. My family doesn't help. And so I marry this gentleman who's seems great on paper. Um,
Yeah.
and then the next thing I know, he's one wife isn't enough. And when you confront him about it, then you end up, you know, wearing dark sunglasses for the Sunday meeting or a long sleeve shirt to cover up marks all over your arms, your neck, your stomach, your side, just all over your body. And then that went on for about 2 years or so. And I
Did
I
you
think
did
the
you ever try to tell did you ever try to tell the brothers? Did anybody ever
oh
notice? Anybody ever say
yeah,
anything?
they they would never say anything. There was one sister in the hall. She was really young, and she would always ask, like, did he? do this. And of course, you can't really say anything. You just kind of nod really quick and keep your head down. But they did. They would come over on a Sunday after the meeting, or we would meet in the back room after, and they would want to get together for counseling. They said
Yeah.
they couldn't help but notice that maybe we were in need of some counseling. They wouldn't address the bruises. They wouldn't address the jumpingness or anything else. And so we started the counseling, and it just got worse.
Yeah,
And
shepherding calls. Let's give you some spiritual assistance here, right?
yeah,
That's probably I'm gonna rant on that for just a second because the elders are so not trained whatsoever in any sort of how to handle abuse, recognizing signs of abuse, how to protect the victims. Like you said, that the jumpiness, the nervousness that somebody who is going through domestic violence, automatically your characteristics start changing, and they can't see that. They don't know
no,
how to help that other than what so I can imagine what the counsel was. Pray more, be more
that
submissive,
and
go to more meetings, go out and
the
service more.
submissive happened a lot. So a lot of the hitting happened primarily like in the evening, like around dinner time. So he was very particular about a red box of banquet chicken, to where I had to have that for him a lot. But with that came a vegetable, a cornbread, and a dessert, and all of those had to be cooked.
Yeah,
So, um, and if not, I usually ended up curled up on the floor of the kitchen, just kind of staring underneath the stove, like wondering, maybe I should have put the chicken in last or done the vegetables first or last so they didn't burn, you know, instead of thinking, this is not okay. I shouldn't
yeah,
even be laying on the floor,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah, we
but
don't we're not given any sort of empowerment to get out of physically dangerous situations for you and your baby and your boy.
no, yeah. And at that time I had the the oldest and then the youngest, and the youngest was just a baby. Um, but I think once he started in on the one I fought so hard to get back, um, that was my straw because
Yeah. So
I
that's
couldn't
his
need
that's
one
so
one
your
thing.
baby, the baby that you fought for, his stepson.
Yeah,
So then the stepson starts struggling.
yeah. So in the pulling of the ear and the hitting to where the nose, he gets his nose and the nose bleeds, and I can't stop the nosebleed, or the choking, the slapping,
Yeah.
you know, um, I saw him out of the corner of my eye once just kind of go, you whacked him with the extension to the vacuum, where
Mhm.
you reach the high spots. And um but the day in the hallway was that was my straw. I was done. I was absolutely done.
Yeah.
And after he got arrested and his mom showed up at the neighbor's house the next day with a couple of the brothers from her hall, um and I think it was right around when Michael Jackson died, because that was on the TV. I remember just thinking, I'm not getting him out. He can rot.
Yeah.
And that's when I I had to leave. But in order to save one, I had to leave the other.
I get it, honey. I get it. I get it.
So
I love you, sweetheart. I know how hard this is. I know how hard. And the reason why we're telling this story is because you're not alone. When you were going through that, honey, you thought you were all by yourself. You didn't know that there were people out there. You didn't know that there was support out there. And you know what? Neither did I. And somebody out there right now is watching this video, honey, and they're looking at you and they think that they're all alone. And they're not, because you know what it's like. You know what they've been through. You know what it's like to have to make these hard calls because of this stupid religion. So at the same time, not only are you going through this abuse, but he's been unfaithful too, right? So you
Oh,
go to
yeah.
the
So,
elders and you talk to the elders about that, and what did they do about that?
well, he did get, scolded for that. But then when they dug deeper as far as like our relationship, how we really started, how were we dating, how did we meet? And I had told them, well, I was kind of inactive at the time when I met Stephen, and I said, I just, even though he wasn't 100% really going to meetings, we were both kind of just going in and out. But then we had had sex prior to being married up in Missouri.
Mhm.
When he came down to Oregon, um, we did end up having sex, and then I was like, well, maybe this isn't going to work. But we did get married, and I told the brothers. I said, and then shortly after,
But this
um,
is like, wait, this is
about
how long after the fact?
years. We had been married a couple of years by now. At this point, 3 years, I
So you've
think.
been married a couple
And
of years.
I,
He's
yes,
committing
and
adultery. You go to
yes, and
talk
then
about the adultery and this comes up.
yeah. So then they just look like really upset at that point, shocked. And they kind of one leans over, whispers to the other, and then they excuse us for a second. And we're like, okay, so we leave. And I just couldn't look at him at this point. I was just like, oh, they're going to let him have it. But then we go back in and we ended up getting disfellowshipped. We go to tell them about his affairs and we end up getting disfellowshipped over something that happened years ago. And I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that at all. I didn't even think that was going to be an outcome or an option. Um, but we did. We both got disfellowshipped. And of course, the rumor started. Everybody was wondering why this married couple is getting disfellowshipped.
Right.
But his mom, she was very good at clearing the air, had to tell everybody why,
Mhm.
and just straighten them out. But until I was reinstated, I wasn't allowed to spend a lot of time with my youngest son.
Yeah.
So I worked very hard on trying to get back in so I could
So
see him.
your in-laws had him,
Yes,
their
my ex-husband
grandparents?
had him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I kind of was left there at the house until, you know, until I could see what I had done.
Right.
And once I
Right.
made it right. And he got reinstated within like 3 or 4 months. So
And
I took longer.
how long did it take for you to get reinstated?
I'm gonna say 6 months, something like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So in this meantime, they're manipulating you. They're withholding your baby, which they have no legal right to do, nor do they have any sort of spiritual right whatsoever to punish a mother with not being able to see her own baby. That's the insanity of that is heartbreaking. Okay, so you end up getting out of that situation, and then what happens?
So I leave St. Louis or Joplin. I go to St. Louis,
Mhm.
and then I end up in a domestic violence shelter for about 3 months. Um, and that's exactly where I needed to be. So it took the whole program to get me back on my feet. So I
Mhm.
stayed I was at the Kathy J. Wyman Center for 3 months, and they were amazing. They they had rules like everybody else,
Mhm.
which was not hard for me to follow. They were
Right.
very easy. You just had to be in before 9 o'clock. That's it. And no alcohol, no drinking. So I could do all of those things. They were so easy, but they offered support and counseling, and I needed every single one of those things. Oh,
Yeah.
but
Right.
yeah, it's
Right,
what I
so
needed.
the support came the support came from the world. It came from
Yeah.
people who were truly able to recognize somebody that was in a situation and needed some support, and you
Yes.
didn't get that. You didn't get that in the religion.
No, I did not.
But in
There
spite
was
of all this, you still didn't wake up.
no,
We
no,
didn't. I know, me either, it's okay.
no. I was like, okay, well, you really have to work hard in this religion. Yeah. you have to make sure everybody's
Yeah,
happy. Um,
yeah, yeah.
but I remember when I moved to a really small town out by Wenatchee, um, it's like everyone there was so much talk. You know, I was a single mom. I moved to this tiny little town and the whispers and I remember thinking like, "Oh my god, it's just like my mom." You know, everyone just feels bad for you instantly
Right,
and you're like, "I'm fine. I've been doing this a while."
right, right,
But
right.
um yeah, I just it never gets easier and I never thought that anything bad about them. I just thought it's just hard to be a witness. That's it. I got to be doing something wrong. It's
Right.
gotta be my personality or something. I was always being called in the back room because I always had questions. I just wanted to know things, and when I would walk up to a certain brother, I get the same look, and he's like, "Again?" It's like, "Well, I just wanna know. I just have a quick question." And then
Yeah,
it was just pray to Jehovah about it or, you know, because I'd wanna
yeah,
know why do we do certain things, and I never got a direct answer.
yeah.
It's like, why don't they do background checks on people, you know? Well, that's not really what we do, you know?
Right.
So
Which is a sane, normal, healthy question, by the way,
yeah, yeah.
and they don't have an answer for it. They don't have an answer
Mm-mm.
for it.
No, because I mean, I've gone to a lot of halls. I'm not gonna lie. You know, I would get a lot of grief when I would move to a different hall because I did. I traveled around a lot. I want to say I've been to a dozen or more, but
Mhm.
it was just me and my son. After it was Steve and the first husband were gone, I just thought there's no reason why I can't travel and move around and try different jobs here and go all over Washington State, Oregon if I wanted to. I'm not
Yeah,
married. There's nobody telling me I can't. But for some reason, whenever I would go to another hall, it was like the stairs and the talking but then I remembered my cards follow me. So you never really get a fresh start.
yeah,
So
yeah.
when you go somewhere and your cards go with you, they know all about your disfellowshipping
Issues,
or
your
yes,
your
everything. My
sins, your
childhood,
mistakes.
those cards go with you from start to end.
Yeah,
And it's like, that's not really a fresh start. When you go somewhere, you know, you're not always the same person.
yeah,
I'm not the same person I was in my 20s. I'm in my 40s
yeah, yeah.
and whole different Mary Ellen. And it's
Right.
just, there's a lot of things I wish I would have said and a lot of things I wish I would have done differently.
Yeah, yeah.
But I,
The consistency with the poor treatment as you go from congregation to congregation, I think is a interesting point too, because not everybody probably travels as much as that. I did. I was in all kinds of different congregations, and I think sometimes when you're just in one congregation, it's you think it's just this, or, there's imperfect people, so maybe it's just this congregation. But
yeah,
as you're going from place to place and you're seeing the consistencies in poor behavior, ostracism, feeling like you've got this shadow over your head, you start to realize, wait a second, this is systematic. This isn't an isolated situation. This all the congregations are like that, right?
yeah,
So then eventually you find another another brother.
yeah. Third one was good. First two not so great. So my third husband, um, we actually grew up in the same Kingdom Hall together in Oregon City, and I used to babysit him and his brothers. And he came up one weekend, just to say hi. I hadn't seen him probably since I think he was 12, to be honest. The last time I saw him, and I told him that because he was very upset I was leaving, but I told him when make you a deal. If I'm 30 and I'm single, we can totally get married. And he looked really excited. He was like, okay. And I said, so you take care of yourself and I'll see you in the future. And sure enough, when I turned 30, yeah. there he was. So, and he came up for a visit and he never went home. He's been up here ever since.
Mhm.
So, but
Mhm.
he was also, his parents are still witnesses. His dad's an elder. They're amazing people. I grew up with them. His mom, unfortunately, she did her best with my mom, but my mom was very stubborn and she was very good at what she did when she would talk to people. So, but there's a few that she just couldn't slay. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but like I've told him, there's some witnesses out there that I think they really think that they're doing great, and I applaud that. There's probably somebody out there that they're really really helping, like my Bible teacher or
Yeah.
Marilyn or Sister Fitty. I mean, there's a few out there that I owe a great deal of thanks to, and a lot of them, like I said, aren't here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
everything they've ever taught me, I still know and I remember. But this everybody else that I could have done without.
Yeah. Yeah. You
So that
know,
just made it
there
miserable.
are there are good people in the
Yeah,
organization.
absolutely.
There are people that really do have good hearts and that they mean well. And it's just maybe someday they'll wake up, maybe someday they'll be able to get out too, because the systematic abuse in the religion is so even through all this time, you still aren't waking up. There's just something wrong with you. You're just
No,
not good enough. You're just not submissive enough. It's
not getting
you,
it.
right?
I'm not catching on. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bad
right?
witness. I'm just the worst of the worst of the worst.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
awful.
You're
But
reaping what you sow. Is
um, and then
but you're not awake. You're not realizing that this is a fault. So at what point what's kind of the breaking point then for you here?
my
Because you're
mom's
still
death.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So up until your mom's death, you're
Yeah.
hanging in there. So what were you are you did you feel like you were hanging in there because you didn't want to be shunned by your mom or
I didn't want the lecture. I didn't want because when she would call or she would write a letter, even a non-birthday card, wink wink,
yeah.
um, because even if you put a sticker over birth, it still says happy day, but it was the whole left side of the card would be filled with a story about everything she's ever sacrificed. And to keep in mind that, I owe a future to all of my kids, and at this point I'd only had the two boys. And she's like, you got to think about them and everlasting life. And, do you want them in this world? And I'm thinking about everything I've gone through in this world. No, I didn't go through anything in this world. I went through everything I went through in a church, like in a kingdom
Right.
hall. And they get
Right.
so mad when you say church, but it's a religion.
Right.
And I, yeah, but after she died, I remember flying out and I walked into her house. And I was told that the brothers and sisters were constantly coming by or bringing her food. Um, and once I left home, I really never came back. I mean, I did here and there, but I was gone.
Mhm.
So I didn't really see her house much. But when I walked in and I saw the feces and the urine and the just the hallway alone from floor to ceiling and above was just black mold and food and it just smelled and it was disgusting and they left her there. Like they just you mean to tell me you went and checked on this elderly sister and brought her food and did her laundry or whatever you did or that you took care of her and you let her live like this? You let her sleep in a bed with feces on it? You let her floor, I mean her windows just she didn't even have a shower. I didn't get it.
Yeah.
So when I found out her best friend took her pawn tickets and went and picked out all of her jewelry from, she wasn't even cold, went through her purse, grabbed those pawn tickets, went down to the pawn place in Portland, took all of her jewelry out, class ring, everything she had pawned for my little brothers. She refused to give it back to us
Right.
kids or to me because she felt
The
that we
daughter,
were not
the daughter.
deserving of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were not deserving of them, of these items. That's why
Yeah.
she took them. So when I called the brothers in the hall and I said, you know, this is what happened, the first thing out of his mouth is, well, there's not really much we could do. And Rich said that, you know, she grabbed these things, so your mom must have entrusted her. We're not really going to get in the middle of it. And then I brought up the house, and he's like, okay, again, I'm not going to get in the middle of it. You know how your mom is. It's like, I don't care. She couldn't chase you. She was a very, very heavy lady,
You
you
know,
know?
I love how they can't get in the middle of that, but they can get in the middle of private details of your personal relationships and get all of those gory details. I love
Yeah.
that. So, when your mom passes, that's kind of like when you're like, "Okay, I'm done."
Mhm.
But you still didn't wake up.
No, no. I
So,
mean, I
was
still
it kinda
was
like
going to
was it kinda
halls.
just like a give up, "I'm not good enough, I can't do it," kind of a giving up kinda thing? So
I just
when did you real what so tell me about that.
so the well, the hypocrisy, I think I just kind of like what you mentioned just a moment ago about, they can get involved with something as simple or jewelry. Um, but removing a child or, you know, a wife being abused, that you're going to put in, that you want to get in the middle of. But anything
Right,
else, no.
right.
So I just, and I know this is going to sound bad, but after she passed, I wouldn't have the guilt. All that guilt was gone. So,
Okay, so hold on just a second here, honey. I don't you think this is gonna sound bad? No, hello. Yeah, the guilt
you
did
know,
disappear. The guilt did disappear.
yeah,
They were guilting you she was guilting you. She was manipulating you with your own children.
yeah,
It's hard to
mm,
recognize that. I know. I know it's
it
hard to
is.
recognize that. And then we were brainwashed with guilt. We were brainwashed with guilt. Being free from that, there is nothing to feel guilty about that. You own that, sweetheart. You own that. Yes, you are free of guilt. Good, because that was a different form of abuse, honey. No one should
Yeah,
use your children to manipulate you because they did that to me
yeah,
too. I know what that's like. Part of
yeah,
the reason why I went back was because for my child's everlasting life. Maybe I might have been willing to risk my own everlasting life, but you can't risk your children's everlasting life. That is manipulation 101. You shake
yeah,
that guilt. You leave that guilt in the dust because that was just as inappropriate as everything else you went through, honey. I
yeah,
promise. I promise. So now you don't have that pressure. And so, you've got
yeah,
some chains kind of feel like they fall off, right?
yeah, yeah. It felt it was very freeing because I knew if I
Mhm.
if I missed a meeting or a convention or an assembly, I would have nobody call me to ask.
Mhm.
It's kind of like, did you make it to class or did you catch the bus? But all the time, you know, and it was nice not to have that for a while.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I miss my mom, but I don't miss that part of
Yeah.
it. I don't miss you know, the making me do everything in that house. And I know that I'm not the only young sister that grew up like that, where
Yeah.
it was my job because she was a single mom, to pitch in
Mhm.
and do chores. But the thing was, there's chores, yes, but then there's what I had to do, which was, for instance, getting up for school. I was the first one awake. So I get up, I get the boys' pills out. They're Ritalin. One had one yellow, one white pill. The other one had two yellow, one white pill. And then get them each a separate glass of water, but it had to be the same color glass because they would fight. take their pill, make sure they had breakfast, get all their stuff together. And then they had to wait for me at the kitchen table. Then I had to go get myself ready. Then I had to get my stuff together. Then I had to make sure that the house was cleaned before I left for school. We walked down to the bus, took the bus, came home, started all over again, picked up their backpacks, made sure that they sat at the table, started doing their homework, laundry, dishes, dinner, floors, sweeping, vacuuming, make sure their stuff's got ready for the meeting if it was a Tuesday or Thursday night. And then it just kept going from there,
Right.
and my day did not stop when we got home from the meeting. If there was dishes or if there was a mess anywhere, I had to take care of that. In fact, I actually just told the story to a girlfriend the other day, and it had been a long time since I remembered this, but I was in a program at Clackamas Community College called the TCAP program. It was Tri-Cities Alternate Program. And I remember leaving for school and I knew that the dishes weren't done and the pile by the fridge wasn't swept up. So I thought, okay, maybe she won't notice and I'll go to school. So I remember sitting there and I was holding this book, A Child Called It by Dave Pelzer. And I was about ready to talk about what I had just read for homework the night before. And I saw our car pull in and just park right on the lawn of that little house right there. And I ended up being dragged out of that school in front of everybody. And I got pulled out of class, drove home to finish the dishes and sweep up that pile.
Yeah.
And then she drove me back. And like I knew it was gonna happen. I really did. Like
Mhm.
I knew she wasn't gonna like let it go.
Overlook it. Yeah.
Um, yeah. But I never thought that she would pick me up from school the way that she
And with
did.
all that responsibility,
Yeah.
you have to worry about whether you get a backpack or shoes that fit.
Hmm. Yeah. Or with no holes. Or clothes that didn't make me look like a boy. Or haircut
While
that didn't
your
make me look like a boy.
while your mom is writing $800 donation checks to the Kingdom Hall.
Yeah. 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 I never got that JanSport backpack. I always wanted. Yeah. But I got shoes that fit and with no holes. But it would have been nice to have
I wanted
both.
I can I share that detail? Can I share that detail how you found out that
Yeah.
she was making the or you can share it.
No, no, yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So here this sweetheart is taking care of her brothers and sister or her brothers and she's got all of these responsibilities. They're living in poverty. And then she gets married and her husband is the account servant that's collecting the contributions at the Kingdom Hall and informs her that her mother's been making large donations all that time. So here they are living in total poverty and mom's writing
Thousands.
$1,000 donation checks to the organization.
Yeah. He was
I'm
like, "You
so
didn't
sorry.
know?"
That's disgusting.
The
That's
words out of
disgusting.
my mouth were like, "Beep, beep, 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 beep." Yeah, I had no idea. None.
Right.
None. Like, the 40-something-year-old me now wants to go back in time and just grab her and shake her and be like, "What the hell? Feed these kids. Like,
Right.
go get some fruit."
Yeah.
Milk that doesn't require water, or when the
Yeah.
milk would get low because we had this 5-gallon jar, we had to add water, because the ladle wouldn't fit. I mean,
Right.
just a regular gallon of milk or cheese that didn't squish when you cut it.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, just it was sick. I was so mad.
Well, it's the brainwashing from the cult too. It's the 100% the brainwashing, be that poor widow that puts in her only 2 coins and look how praised she is. So there's a lot of families like that. So
Yeah.
she passes away. That was what you said about 14 years ago.
14 years ago today.
Okay. So then you finally woke up. How did you finally wake up? During COVID, you said.
That was a slap. Um, it was when I was sitting down, I was really paying attention to that Scientology thing, and that special came on about Jehovah's Witnesses and the stories. And we grew up with a few odd fellas in our hall. And when I heard these stories, I just was like, oh my God, that's us. Like, that's us. That's literally,
Oh my God, we were in a
you know,
cult.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I paused it. And I remember thinking, I dropped the remote for one, and I kind of was just sitting there Indian style on the couch, dropped the remote, and I think my exact words were like, holy shit. And then
I had
my
that moment
husband,
too.
yeah, he's sitting at the computer and he kind of turns around jokingly and he's like, what happened to you? And I said, well, I don't know. Just, you're never going to guess. And then I told him everything that I thought, and you're never going to guess. This is just like Jehovah's Witnesses, and da da da. And he's like, well, I could have told you that, years ago. And, of course, me, I'm like, why didn't you? He's like, I tried. So
Yeah,
it just,
yeah,
it,
that's how
it,
deep the brainwashing goes.
yeah, it, until I saw somebody else talking about certain things that happened to them at their hall, I thought, it's the same. It doesn't matter which hall I went to. It wouldn't have mattered.
It wouldn't have
It
mattered.
wouldn't have mattered which elders I had, even though, even when I lived in Tacoma, all over, all the halls I've been to, there's probably 3 elders I can count that were amazing, that wishes that there was more that they could have done
Right.
or really wanted to do. Um, but everybody else, it's just they're all like that.
Yeah.
It was the same. It was the same. The
Desensitized,
people,
hands off, robotic.
yeah. And we weren't like a very affectionate family. I don't think I ever heard, well, no, that's not true. I was 16 when the first time I ever heard I love you from my mom. I was getting on a train in Portland, Oregon to come up here to Tacoma to visit my dad for the weekend. And she had asked me not to get on the train. And I was like, why? She's like, well, because I love you. And I almost stayed right then and there just because I'd never heard it. But then I
Yeah.
got mad. And then I thought, no. So, and I
Yeah.
don't think I heard it again for, I don't know, a long time, a long
Yeah.
time.
So
So
now you're post cult. What's probably the biggest tip that you can share with anybody who's getting out? Anybody who's questioning, anybody who's already awake, anybody who's recently out. What's something that's helped you?
talking, reading, you're not the only person out there. And that's what
Mhm.
I thought for years and years and years. And that's why I think watching that video or that Scientology thing, I'm over here laughing and thinking like these people are crazy. They're following their members around. Like they're just like, what the hell? And then I heard that story and I'm like, it's not just me. It was never just me. It's never just gonna be me.
Right.
There's so many people. And then after that, I just kept watching more and hearing more, and then talking to other people. And then I met you, and it's like I heard your story. So similar.
Yeah.
So the one thing that really would have helped me is listening and watching and asking questions. And
Yeah.
even though they told me not to say anything, or that I do ask too many questions, or screw it, ask the questions, make it uncomfortable for them.
Right.
Who cares? You know how many
Right.
years they made it uncomfortable for me? Even
Yeah.
at 7 or 8 years old, the first thing that these sisters would do when I would walk in is grab my arm and ask me how horrible I have been to my mom, or I hope I don't hear anything negative today about your behavior, or, you know, Jehovah's supposed to be, they teach about this loving God. And he is wonderful, amazing, which is why I don't scare children. I don't
Right.
see them. That's nowhere, it says anywhere about putting the fear of God into children. And that's
Right.
exactly how I felt,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and
Right.
there were some amazing people in my hall.
You
But then,
know,
like I said,
our stories were so similar, and no matter how hard you're 100% right. No matter how hard you try, No matter how much of a super pioneer I was, no matter how much of an, it didn't freaking matter. It didn't matter, you
No.
know? I mean, sometimes I wonder if maybe there's people out there that wonder if the Jehovah Witness elitists, maybe had it better than some of the other. No, no, none of us had it good. We were all in a cult, you
Yeah.
know, across the board. We were all in a cult. And getting out, the recovery process from getting out, you're 100% right. Talking makes a huge difference.
It does.
Your
It does.
voice matters, your story matters. If your story touches one other human's life and helps them have that wake up moment and realize, "Oh my gosh, I'm in a cult. I need to get out." Then it matters. And so, you know what? I'll just, as we're wrapping this up, I will say too, if anybody else out there has a story that they would like to share, feel free to please send me an email because our stories matter. You know,
Mhm.
we were we were in a religion that talked about this international brotherhood, or our loving international brotherhood. And you
Bible.
know what? Now you really have one because we're not ruled by rules of a cult. I think maybe one of the well, I don't know why I didn't look for ex Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe 10 years ago, 11 years ago, it didn't exist. Maybe we weren't as vocal in
Yeah.
2014 as we are right now. I don't know if YouTube channels for ex Jehovah's Witnesses existed 11 years ago or Facebook groups or whatever. But had I known, I would not have felt so isolated, you know? I would
Yeah.
not that might have made a huge difference. And when I realized that there were these communities out there, I absolutely felt like, no, it's time to share our stories. It's time to talk because that's
Mhm.
healing. It's very healing to know that what you went through, you are a beautiful person. You know what? And I want you to know, thank you very much for sharing your story because I know how hard that is. When I've shared my story, I've cried because it's not easy. It's not easy. If one human, though, whose heart could be touched by what we went through, then for me it was worth it. For me, that's what's going to make a difference. Is if one person wakes up because they say, "Damn, I'm not alone," you know, the amount of people who take their own lives because of shunning and because of this cult is also horrible. And maybe part of the reason why that happens is because they do feel alone. So we don't know how many people these videos touch. Some of these videos
Yeah.
get thousands and thousands of views. And so if you're out there listening, we love you. We are here for you. You are not alone. You have support. So use it. Don't act like you're alone because you're not. You really
Yeah.
aren't. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's my email if anybody would like to share a story. Please, 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 please um, give us some comments, even if it's just a thumbs up. That helps the YouTube algorithms so that more people get to see these videos. And to you, sweetheart, thank you so much for sharing your evening with me. Mwah. Thank you.
You're welcome.